Welcome to the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills. My name is David O'Regan. I'm a consultant cardiac surgeon in Yorkshire in the United Kingdom, and I'm also the director of the Faculty of Surgical Trainers for the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. Tonight we're going to look at assisting. Now, craftsmen over the years have always had an apprentice, and in that respect surgery has been considered an apprenticeship. And the relationship between a craftsman and apprentice has gone back thousands of years. The apprentice would spend time with the craftsman learning the art, and in fact would be paid by the apprentice to learn the art, and if that product was spoilt in any way at all, the apprentice guardian or parents would have to pay for the product, if not pay for the training. And I was chatting to a colleague, Ashok, earlier today, who said when he was at medical school in 1965 in Varela at the Christian Medical Centre in India, the SHOs and registrars had to pay their surgical trainers for learning. Our first steps in surgery is always around assisting. But have you really thought about the principles that are required? And I was looking at my bookshelf earlier and I came across an annual that I was given at the age of 14 called Look and Learn. Every surgeon you work for, and I've worked with the good, the bad and the ugly, all have tips and tricks. And it's your opportunity as an assistant to actually learn those tips and tricks. Because Lloyd Moynihan said, and I mentioned him last week, said surgical experience is a posy of other men's flowers. And on your rotation and working with different surgeons, you need to pay attention to their tips and tricks. And it comes back to the principles of the samurai warrior. First of all, practice and cultivate the science. In that regard, you should know your anatomy. And the Guild of Barber Surgeons in 1505, at the start of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh, mandated that knowledge of anatomy was important. Know the principles of the craft, but as an assistant I'd suggest you should know the principles of the operation, and before you assist, perhaps go and watch an operation so you understand its various steps and various parts. Number 6 of the principle was to learn to see everything accurately and become aware of what is not obvious. Now, to my mind, the expert surgeon has a lot of knowledge, but sadly over the years this has become tacit and very seldom is it made explicit. So the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills is here to help make it more explicit. Number 7 was become aware of what is not obvious. And be careful even in the small matters and do not do anything useless. I think those are sound principles for an assistant. So, as I reflect on the annual I received when I was a 14-year-old boy, I have the pleasure this evening of introducing my assistant. My son, Alistair, has joined me and in the spirit of martial arts is wearing his gi of the karate club where we trained together. He got his second dan in karate before I did and was the reason I joined. Going back to the principles of posture, you'll note at 14 is nearly my height. Interesting thing is, he hands his shoes down to me as his feet are still growing. The first principle of assisting is a bit like dancing, and I was interested, as we write this paper, to speak to expert dancers and what makes a good dance partner. And a good dance partner follows the steps and follows the rhythm and knows what's coming next. So in that regard, assisting, I think, is a bit like dancing. In the first instance, Alistair, put your hands on my shoulders. The first principle is, put your hand down there, it's to keep your body parallel to the surgeon all the time. So if I am going to my right, you are going to your right, and the midline maintains between us. If I move to my left, you are moving to your left, and our shoulders are parallel all the time. That means that the first rule of thumb is never reach across the midline. Even if I'm at this angle, the midline is here. Coming across this way, the midline is here. The second rule of thumb is never cross the midline of your body, even as a surgeon. So do not cross your hands. Keep them apart. So it means if the suture is coming out to your right hand, you catch it with your right hand. If it's coming out to your left hand, you catch it with your left hand, and you pass the instrument to the hand that's not holding the suture. The second important principle is, and to demonstrate an operative field, I have a plate and a small plate on the table here. You've seen this model before as we worked around the clock, and I'll explain it as we go. Imagine the small plate is the operative field. That is where I'm going to have my instruments operating. My assistant keeps their hands on the outside of the operative field, usually demarcated by the retractor. So, if you put your hands outside my master and move around again, there you go, and you move around this way, and your hands are always on the outside and they're not crossed over. Very good. One of the key skills with assisting is you'll be asked to follow a suture. Now, there are simple principles involved. By way of example, I've used this boot string, which I hope you can see, and I've marked 2/5 along the length. Now, the surgeon, when taking a stitch, is going to hold the suture up under tension and in the direction that is required. As an assistant, it's important that you actually pick it up with a palp of the finger and thumb. And as described before, that gives you the lightness of touch. Your finger and thumb are directed towards the field, such that if I pull it, the suture comes out. Imagine if my finger was hooked round, I pull it, it will tear. So, shall we try that? We'll start from this side, and I am going to take a suture from that side, finger and thumb held out. So, I worked with one surgeon, his nickname was Gentleman Jim, and one of my first cardiac operations I assisted with, he gave some sound advice. He said it's a lateral hold and not a pull. The other cardiac surgeon I worked with, who taught me about hands on the outside, Stephen Westerby, I nicknamed him Steven Spielberg Westerby because he did some fantastic videos of major aortic valve replacements. But the camera was always above, and as he made these movies, if your hands came across the view, it would ruin the film. Very good lesson. So, lateral hold, maintain the tension, okay, maintain the tension, finger and thumb in the direction. So I'm going to simulate a stitch, take a stitch, let go please. I'm going to place the stitch and I'm going to hold it out at the angle, follow my shoulders round, and take a stitch, let go, and place the suture, and I'm going to follow around. Very good, and I'm impressed that you naturally moved from your right hand to the left hand as we went round. I'm going to take another stitch, let go, I'm going to hold it up in the direction I want to go, and I'm going to take a further stitch, and place it, and hold it up, take another stitch, place it, hold it up, and Alistair has already got it. His finger and thumb are pointing in the direction of the suture and is maintaining a lateral hold and not a pull. Take another stitch, let go, finger and thumb, take another stitch, let go, finger and thumb, hold it. There you go. So should we try doing that without me prompting you from here? Okay, there you go. Excellent. Well done. Okay. Okay. And you notice my cue and prompt for Alistair actually to follow the suture is to hold it up and pause in the direction and with the tension the suture is leaving the tissue. Now let's make this little exercise a bit more complicated. I'm going to give Alistair a pair of forceps in his opposite hand. We're going to start in the same position there, and Alistair, you're going to hold the forceps, alright, like that. Very good, excellent. Finger and thumb, alright. Never, if you drop something, never ever reach in and grab, okay? Doesn't matter. You'll cause more damage reaching in and grab. Do not panic. Relax, okay? You're doing good. Right, so let's take another, keep it on the tension, another stitch, and would you hold that there for a moment, because you're pretending you reach and let go. Hold it again. And we're pretending he's actually holding tissue. And the important thing is that now the left hand should not be pulling or dragging away. There's an interdependence in the hands. Let go, hold it round, up, another stitch, let go. Well done. And without prompting, you picked up the tissue and you've swapped the hands. Very good. Hold there, let go, and up, another stitch, and up again. One more, and up again. Fantastic. I think we're almost ready to move on to the real thing. And we're going to go bananas. And if you've been following our course, you'll know that I'm very keen on stitching bananas. There's just one important thing that I forgot to mention when Alistair first stood at the table. We have the same height. And at the Black Belt Academy, when we're practicing these skills, we pair you up at the same height. But there's always a problem if there's a disparity in height between the surgeon and the assistant. If the assistant is shorter than the surgeon, not a big deal. Get a step and stand on that. But if the surgeon is significantly shorter than the assistant, and my last trainee was 6'7" and was a good head and shoulders above me, I was the first consultant ever to stand on a step to make it comfortable for him to assist. Not a good idea, I think, and I encourage all trainers to bear that in mind. But if you're caught in a situation where the trainer has not recognized that, and you are very tall, think about the way a giraffe drinks. The front legs spray out, so you can go down further and further into the splits. And certainly in karate, I can go down into a kibarashi stance and maintain a height if necessary. I meant to mention that at the beginning because posture is important for both you and your assistant in this dance macabre, so to speak. So I've got here a 3/0 maxon. And Alistair, I'd like you to assist me now, and you won't be able to see the suture because it's 3/0 and it's like catgut in a monofilament. Now the important thing is, immediately, he's taken it 2/3 way along and very nicely is actually holding the tension. But as I pointed out to him earlier, let go please, particularly on soft tissue, and maintain it out in the direction. Hold, very good. And as I'm stitching this and placing the sutures, you are maintaining the tension, and you let go, and it must never get caught on my needle holder there, but it should not get caught in your fingers, because if it does, you'll find that a monofilament can actually act as a cheese wire and cheese wire through the tissue. And again, I'm deliberately holding it out, and well done, finger and thumb, you're holding this. So as each stitch goes through, just maintain that tension, please, and let go. Excellent. And I'm holding out. There you go, and you're moving round. Keep round again. Good. Come closer, Al. Good. Thank you very much. And let go. And hold out. And I think already Alistair's actually got the basis of what makes a good assistant. Do you want to do surgery?
No, not really, thanks.
Not really. This doesn't stimulate you to do it.
No.
Oh dear, never mind. So, that is the principle of assisting. It is actually finger and thumb in the direction, a lateral hold and not a pull. Never reach in and grab. Now the last thing you'll be asked to do is to cut sutures. So if a surgeon holds up a ligature, 2 strands, that's a flag signal saying cut this, and you need to know how long to cut it. Usually the surgeon will tell you to cut it flush, but it usually is between 5 to 8 millimeters. And when you're cutting, as a trainee, you can discipline yourself to actually make sure that that length is perfect. So I'm going to ask Alistair to cut the suture. You will not be able to see it, but I will just demonstrate. If I pull this hard, not yet, Al. If I pull this hard, and I lift this out, and I let this develop, you will see on the banana, as previously, if you pull hard, there you go, it tears out. And it's a very good exercise for assistants to learn. So in the Black Belt Academy, when we're testing people on their stitching skills, we then pair them up with somebody to learn their assistant skills and watch the same. The final act of assisting is learning how to cut accurately. So Alistair, would you like to cut this? And wonderfully I've instructed him how to hold the scissors, index finger down the end. You do not open them any further than necessary to do the job. You bring it into the surgical field deliberately, and you make a cut, and you take it away. You certainly do not come in with a flourish and take it away like that. I hope this has given you some idea of simple, basic principles of assisting. Do remember, going into theatre, you will impress the master surgeon if you have some knowledge of the anatomy, if you set yourselves some questions before you went in. Last week we talked about layers and dissections. Be careful by attending to the smallest things. Look for the tips and tricks. As trainee surgeons, you have that wonderful opportunity of spotting the differences between different master surgeons, and therefore will learn your own tips and tricks and pick your own flowers to form a posy for your own development as a surgeon. The surgeons I trained with in Oxford when I first started cardiac surgery, one of them trained on the London rotation, and I could see working with his trainers where he picked his flowers and how he put together his various tips and tricks. The sad thing as a consultant, now for 19 years, we don't regularly help each other. And I think I'd encourage that in every unit so you can learn tips and tricks from colleagues. However, that busy bee that goes around pollinating all the flowers, the trainee on the rotation, is picking up tips and tricks all the time. And my advice to a surgical trainer is listen to their observations, inquire and learn. I've certainly made 4 significant changes to my operative practice by listening to some tips and tricks that have been shared by the apprentice trainee who have worked with other master surgeons. So I'll come back to my annual as a 14-year-old, and I'd like to thank my son as a 14-year-old. Please look and learn. Understand the smallest of things. If you've enjoyed this evening's session, please leave a comment on Facebook, put a thumbs up. I'd welcome your feedback, and I'd welcome you to join me next week as we tackle a very knotty problem. So from the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills is Norrie, Ray, us, and be safe. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.